So we say Shabbat Shalom here to our YouTube family who's going to listen to this later on. Shabbat Shalom to the elder Ak Yahuda. Shabbat Shalom to the younger Ak Ephraim. Shabbat Shalom to the former stranger, the former Gar, the former Goyim, former nation, the former Gentile, who is no longer a stranger, no longer a Goy, no longer a Goyim, no longer a Gentile, but having been engrafted into the Ba'if, which is to say the house of Yasha'al, through Ha-Natsar, which is to say the branch, who is Yahusha HaMashiach, whereby becoming branches, which is to say Nazarene, through the spirit of sonship, through the Ruach of sonship, through the Ruach of adoption, the Ruach HaKadosh, having been immersed in his Kadosh name. And having been immersed in his Kadosh name, you have whereby been impaled with him. You have died with him. You've been buried with him. And you've been resurrected into the newness of life. You've been re-engrafted back into the tree of life. You've been re-engrafted back into the olive tree. And now, having been engrafted into the Ba'if of Yasha'al, you are no longer far off. You are no longer a Gentile or a nation or a stranger, but you are now a fellow citizen of the house of Yasha'al, and whereby now you are privy to the very same covenant, everlasting covenant, the very same promises, and the very same inheritance that was given to Yasha'al and to Yasha'al alone. Shabbat Shalom to you worldwide. Wherever your feet are touching the soil on this yom, Shabbat Shalom to you. Shabbat Shalom once again to my Zoom Mashpaka. Wherever your feet are touching the soil on this yom, to the four corners of the Eretz, we welcome again our Caribbean Mashpaka. We welcome all of you, wherever your feet are touching the soil on this yom. Shabbat Shalom to you worldwide. Barak Yahuwah. Barak Yahuwah. Mashpaka, we continue the journey, we continue the search of searching for the ancient path. We did not talk about it the last Shabbat because we were in the wilderness. But the journey continues, as spoken in previous teachings. That we're probably, Abba is probably going to keep us on this journey, on this path for a very long time. For a very long time, because it's very important. It is imperative that we understand what is the ancient path. It is imperative that we understand how to walk the ancient path, because the ancient path is the narrow path that leads to everlasting life. And so we must get this. We must get it. We must understand how to walk the ancient path. It must become our life. It must become the very fabric of our being. We must get this. We must get this. This is the only path. This is the only way that leads to everlasting life. And so, believe it or not, this is going to be part 19 of this teaching. Part 19 of this journey, searching for the ancient path. For the past, I don't know, the past 5 or 6 weeks or so, I guess, Abba has had us looking at the example of our righteous father Abraham, looking at his example of how we should guard, of how we should walk the ancient path. Somebody, can you mute? I think you need to mute because there's an echo. There's an echo. There's an echo somewhere. Barak Yahuwah. So, for the past 5 or 6 weeks or so, he has had us looking at the example of our ancient father, of our righteous father, Abraham. In fact, I believe it's Isaiah 51 that Abba admonishes us to do what? To look to the example of Abraham. Look to his example. in how to walk the ancient path. He not only tells us to look to the example of Abraham, but he also tells us to do what? He also admonishes us to look to the rock. To look to the rock. Who is the rock? The rock is Yahuwah himself. The rock is Yahusha. The rock is the ancient path. The rock is Torah. The rock is the living Torah. And so continuing this journey, we started out looking at the example of, I believe we started out looking at the example of Enoch, of Canuk. And then Abba moved us to look to the example of Methuselah and Noach. From Methuselah and Noach, we've been on Abraham, looking at Abraham now for the past 5 or 6 weeks. We're not going to end with Abraham. It's not going to end here. It's going to end this day looking at Abraham. Yahuwah willing, it's going to end this day in looking at the example of Abraham. But Yahuwah willing, next week, we're going to start the journey of looking at another one of our righteous fathers. Looking at the example of another one of our righteous fathers and looking at their example in determining through their example how it is that we should walk this ancient path. And so it wasn't last week, I think it was the week before last, it may have been the week before that, we stopped off in Jubilees, Jubileem, commonly called Jubilees, but more properly called Jubileem. I believe we stopped at chapter 21. And for the sake of continuity, I want to continue in chapter 21 again. We're going to go over it again, and then we're going to continue through that, and we're going to end reading about, looking at the example of our ancient father, Abraham, through the lenses and the example of the book of Jubilees, more properly called Jubileem. So if you have the so-called apocryphal books, apocrypha is a Latin word which simply means hidden, and indeed they have been hidden from us. They purposely hid these books from us. They're not so-called hidden. They're not so-called, as they say, apocryphal, or they're not, as they say, so-called extra text or extra biblical text. It's actually just scripture. It is scripture. No different than Deuteronomy. The book of Jubilees is scripture. It is scripture that has been hidden from us for far too long. Barak Yahuwah. So if you have your scriptures, turn to Jubilees, the 21st chapter, and we're going to go over this again. Barak Yahuwah. Barak Yahuwah. Beginning in the first verse in the book of Jubilees, more properly called Jubileem, chapter 21, beginning at verse 1, we read. And for those of you both on Zoom and for those of you on YouTube, I'm kind of displaced right now. We're not in our normal location. We're at an undisclosed location. And so I don't have my laptop with me. Normally, I have my laptop, and this is what I use to connect to Zoom. And I normally use my iPad to teach from. But today, I'm using my iPad to connect to Zoom, and I'm having to teach from a cell phone. I'm having to read scripture from a cell phone. And so just bear with me, but Abba's going to get this done through his servant, Barak Yahuwah. Barak Yahuwah. So beginning at verse 1. And in the 6th year of the 7th week of this Jubilee, Abraham called Ishak his son, and commanded him, saying, I am become old, and know not this day the day of my death, and am full of my days. And behold, I am 175 years old, and throughout all the days of my life I have remembered Yahuwah. Here's a key now. Here's a key to walking this ancient path and looking at the example of our ancient father Abraham, our righteous father Abraham, and comparing our walk to his. Because indeed, as previously spoken, his walk mirrored Yahusha's walk. His walk mirrored Yahuwah. Again, we are his children. We are his sons and his daughters. And as his sons and his daughters, we are to what? We are to imitate his behavior. We are to do as he does. Barak Yahuwah. And so Abraham indeed walked as his father Yahuwah walked. And so in looking at the example of Abraham, his walk again mirrors Yahuwah's. His walk mirrored Yahuwah's, mirrored Yahusha's. And as we look at the rest of our ancient fathers, righteous ancient fathers, their walk is going to mirror this walk. It's going to mirror this walk. Indeed, this walk here on earth, it began with Adam. It began with his firstborn son, Adam. He taught Torah to his firstborn son, Adam. Adam then taught Torah to his children, to his firstborn son. His firstborn son then taught Torah to his son. And so the ancient path has been passed down to firstborn sons throughout the generations. Why firstborn sons? Because, again, firstborn son, he looks more like his father. He talks more like his father. He acts more like his father than any of the other children. Indeed, also the firstborn son is all the possessions of the father given to. In the law of inheritance, the firstborn son receives all the possessions of his father. Indeed, if we account it worthy to be firstborn sons in the end, we're going to receive all the possessions of our father Yahuwah. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. But that is predicated upon walking this ancient path now. That is predicated upon walking as our Father walks right now, and whereby looking like him, walking like him, talking like him, and acting like him. And unless you have his Ruach, this is impossible to do. This is impossible to do. This is another characteristic of all of our ancient righteous fathers. They all had his Ruach. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They all had his Ruach, and they all walked the very same way. Yes, they did, because they were all firstborn sons, and they all walked the very same way. And so that promise, the inheritance that was given to Adam, was passed down through the generations to firstborn sons till it reached Noach, and then to Shem, and then to Eber, and then to Abraham, and then to Ishkak, and then to Yaqub. His name was changed to Yasha'al, then to Yahusuf, and then to Ephraim. And then it passed all the way down. It was like a chain of custody, as we've spoken. The everlasting covenant had to be renewed with firstborn sons as a chain of custody until it reached Yahusha, who also was a firstborn son. Not only was he firstborn son, but he came as the firstborn of all creation. And through him, the everlasting covenant has been renewed once and for all. Barak Yahuwah. Barak Yahuwah. But as his firstborn sons, we must walk exactly. Oh, they don't believe me. They don't believe me. They don't believe me. Barak Yahuwah. 1 John chapter 2. Someone turn to 1 John chapter 2. 1 John chapter 2. All of the firstborn sons ultimately walk like Yahusha, who is Yahuwah. Who is Yahuwah. And so walking this ancient path, and we're going somewhere, again, is to walk like our Father, because he is the ancient path. And as he has taught us, the ancient path is Torah, and he is the living Torah. So to walk the ancient path is to walk Torah and to turn neither to the right or to the left of it. 1 John chapter 2.
My little children, I write this to you so that you do not crime. And if anyone crimes, we have an intercessor with the Father, Yahushua HaMashiach, a righteous one. And he himself is an atoning offering for our crimes. And not for yours only, but also for all the world. And by this we know that we know him, if we guard his command.
If we what?
If we guard his command.
Translation. By this we know him, if we walk the very same ancient path that our ancient forefathers walked. This is how we demonstrate that we know him, via action, via walking out this ancient path with reverence and trembling. Barak Yahuwah. Keep going.
The one who says, I know him, and does not guard his commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever guards his word, truly the love of Elohim has been perfected in him.
Mm-hmm.
By this we know that we are in him. The one who says he stays in him,
Come on.
ought himself also to walk.
To what?
To walk.
To what?
To walk.
To walk as?
Even as he walked.
Even as he walked. Walk what? The ancient path. The ancient path. We're going to get to him. Yes, we are. Eventually, Barak Yahuwah. We're going to get to the example of Yahusha because he's the ultimate example. Yes. But building up to this, what you're going to see is all of our ancient fathers walked exactly like he walked. Exactly like he walked. And he came to restore the ancient path to a people who were steeped in the traditions of men, who were steeped in the oral traditions of the fathers. He came to restore the ancient path, the narrow path that leads to everlasting life. Yes. And so with that said, I want to show you something here in verse 2 in Jubilees chapter 21. And behold, I am 175 years old. And throughout all the days of my life, I have remembered Yahuwah. I have remembered Yahuwah. Now, again, as previously spoken, Yahuwah has given us another chance. Now, throughout all the days of our righteous father Abraham's life, he remembered Yahuwah. But Yahuwah has given us another chance. He has given us another chance, provided that you have been born of Ruach. If you have been born of Ruach, he has given us another chance, and he is looking at us as though now we have been walking with him our entire lives. If you would just tashuba and receive his Ruach and begin to walk this ancient path. This is the only way. This is the only way that you and I can become sons and daughters of Abraham. And that is to be born of Ruach. You see, again, Abraham remembered him his whole life. Abraham walked the ancient path his whole life. His whole life. From the time that he was a child. His whole life. And in order for us to be his sons and daughters and to enter into life, we must walk it our whole lives. And so if we are reborn of Ruach, he then from that point on considers a new beginning. Oh, they don't believe me. They don't believe me. If any man be in Hamashiach, he is what? A new creature. All things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. Yes, they have. Yes, they have. This is the only way. This is the only way to enter into life. You must be born of Ruach. And if you're born of Ruach, he has given us another chance. We are now considered children of Abraham, sons and daughters of Abraham. And now we have a fresh start to walk even as Abraham walked. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Do you understand, Mashpaka? And behold, I am 175 years old. And throughout all the days of my life, I have remembered Yahuwah and sought with all my heart to do his will. You see, this is a characteristic of someone walking this ancient path. If you don't love him with all your heart, mind, and strength, you're not a son or daughter of Abraham. And you're not on the ancient path. If you're not seeking to do his will with all of your heart, mind, and strength, you're not a son or daughter of Abraham. And you're not on the ancient path. And moreover, you're not born of Ruach. You are not born of Ruach. It reads here, and sought with all my heart to do his will and to walk. Here we have this word walk again, yalak. Yalak. Walk. Walk what? The ancient path. The ancient path. And to walk uprightly in some of his ways.
Oh.
Part of his ways.
Oh.
A quarter of his ways.
Oh.
Half of his ways.
Oh.
99% of his ways.
Oh.
100%.
All of his ways. Did we not just read this last Shabbat in the Torah?
Mm-hmm.
Did we not just read this last Shabbat in the Torah?
Yes.
In Deuteronomy 28?
Yep.
We just read this. We just read this. And to walk uprightly in all his ways. If you are not seeking to walk uprightly before him and to walk in all his ways, You're on the wrong path. You're on that broad path. You're on that broad path that leads to destruction. You're not on the narrow path. You're not on the ancient path that leads to life. No, you're not. No, you're not. He has told us in Isaiah, the 51st chapter, to look to the example of Abraham. And if you look to the example of Abraham, you're going to see Yahusha in him. You're going to see Yahusha in him, who was what? In accordance, oh, they don't believe me. Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2. I ain't going to give you my words. Philippians chapter 2. Begin at verse 1.
If then there is any encouragement in Mashiach, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of root, if any affection and compassion, make my Shamka complete by being of the same mind, having the same love, one in being and of purpose, doing none at all through selfishness or self-conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves.
That's Abraham. That is Abraham. Keep reading.
Each one should look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interests of others. For let this mind be in you, which was also in Mashiach Yahusha, who, being in the form of Elohim, did not regard equality with Elohim a matter to be grasped.
But did what?
But emptied himself.
Come on.
Taking the form of a servant.
Of a servant. You see, the ancient path is the servant's road. See, it's not the popular road. It's the servant's road. It's the lowly man's road. That was Abraham. That was Abraham who bowed before our men. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Who bought a burial place even though it belonged to him. He purchased the burial place, the cave of Machpelah, even though it already belonged to him. Humility. Humility. This is Abraham. Come on.
And came to be in the likeness of men. And having been found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself.
Yes.
And became obedient unto death.
Even
of a stake.
Even to death on a stake. You can stop right there. So he was obedient unto death. This is the ancient path. This is Abraham. This is Abraham. He obeyed Abba his whole life. His whole life. And understand this, Mishpaka. You cannot do this unless you're born of Ruach. You cannot do this. We cannot do this unless we are born of Ruach. I'm going to read chapter verse 2 again. And behold, I am 175 years old. And throughout all the days of my life, I have remembered Yahuwah and sought with all my heart to do his will. Did we just read this in Philippians chapter 2? And to walk uprightly in all his ways. My soul has hated idols. Did not Yahusha go into the high eagle and whoop the money changers out of the high eagle? Did he not turn over tables and whoop them up out of there? And the text says this was to fulfill the Nabuwah, the prophecy that the door of my father's house is upon me. Barak Yahuwah. Barak Yahuwah. That's Abraham. That's Abraham. Did not Abraham go into his father's temple and break all of his household idols? Did he not do this? This is Abraham. Barak Yahuwah. My soul has hated idols, given my heart and ruach, that I might observe to do the will of him who created him. If you can't say this, Maspaka, if we cannot say this, we're on the wrong path. We're not on the ancient path. We're not walking the path that Yahusha walked. We're not walking the path of the Ancient of Days, which is Torah. Which is Torah. The ancient path, the way everlasting, is Torah. It is Yahuwah. It is Yahuwah. Verse 4. For he is the living Elohim, and he is kadush and trustworthy, and he is righteous beyond all. And there is with him no accepting of men's persons, and no accepting of gifts. For Elohim is righteous and executes judgment on all those who transgress his commandments and despise his covenant. And do you, my son, observe his commandments and his ordinances and his judgments, and walk not after the abominations and after graven images and after the molten images. Now, if you go to Deuteronomy and you start in chapter 27 and you read all the way to the end, you're going to read these very same words. You're going to read these very same words. Before Moshe died, he's doing the very same thing. He's reiterating to our ancestors the ancient path. The very same thing that Abraham is doing now to Ishak. Verse 6. And eat no blood at all of animals or cattle, or any bird with flies in the shamayim. And if you do slay a victim as an acceptable shalom offering, slay ye it, and pour out his blood upon the altar. And all the fat of the offering offer on the altar with fine flour, and the meat offering mingled with oil, with its drink offering. Offer them all together on the altar of burnt offering. It is a sweet savor before Yahuwah. It is a sweet savor before Yahuwah. You see, when we offer ourselves as a whole burnt offering and a sending offering and render him the bulls of our lips, it is a sweet savor unto him. This is the ancient path. This is the ancient path. Abba has already told us this. Rendering him his offerings, giving him the bulls of our lips. This is the ancient path. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you will offer the fat of the sacrifice of thank offerings on the fire which is upon the altar, and the fat which is on the belly, and all the fat on the inwards, and the 2 kidneys, and all the fat that is upon them, and upon the loins and liver, you shall remove together with the kidneys. Now again, as Abba has previously spoken, the fat and the liver and the kidneys, you see, these were offered because the fat is where what? Is where toxins and impurities are stored. And so this is a representation of crime, of impurities, of wickedness being consumed on his altar. Indeed, the kidneys, they do what? The kidneys process toxins. So does the liver. The liver processes toxins. And so these two are placed on the altar and consumed. And this is reminiscent or symbolic of crime, of impurities, of uncleanness, of sin being consumed on his altar. His altar is symbolic of what? Of the second death, of the eternal lake of fire. Because just like the eternal lake of fire, how that fire will not cease. It will never cease. It is an eternal fire. This is why the fire underneath the altar could never go out. They were commanded, the priests were commanded to never let that fire go out, because it is a representation, it is symbolic of the consuming fire of Yahuwah, which is going to consume our crime, which is going to consume our wickedness, which is going to consume all impurities. All impurities. And so it is incumbent upon us to what? As we are lying upon his altar, rendering the bulls of our lips to him, it is incumbent upon us to cry out to him to what? To consume the fat, to consume the kidneys, to consume the kilyah, to consume our liver, to consume every impurity and every unclean thing that is in us. Let nothing unclean remain in us. Consume it all. Consume it all on this altar. As I render you the bulls of my lips, as I render you the bulls of my lips, consume all uncleanness that is in me. Do you not understand by now that all of these offerings represented us? They represented us. They were a representation of us. These offerings took our place. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. This is why they could only bring the firstborn of the animals, because they represented the firstborn son of Yahuwah. And so these offerings represent us. There are no more offerings. We are that offering. We are that offering. And we render that offering by giving him the bulls of our lips and via our obedience. And so as we offer ourselves as living offerings, kadush, and acceptable unto him, we are to cry out to him and pray that he would consume all fat, consume all the impurities, consume all the toxins, consume the liver, consume the Kilyah. Barak Yahuwah. Barak Yahuwah. Verse 9. And after all these, for a sweet savor, acceptable before Yahuwah. I know some of you already know this, even though some of you have heard this before. It is going in one ear and out the other. But the reason that I'm repeating this is because we have new Mashpaka here, and they may not have heard this before. And so some things that have already been spoken, I'm going to repeat them so that our Caribbean Mashpaka and anyone else who is new here and anyone else on YouTube who has not heard this before will hear this now. Verse 9. And offer all these for a sweet savor acceptable before Yahuwah, with its meat offering and with its drink offering, for a sweet savor, the bread of the offering unto Yahuwah. And eat its meat on that day and on the second day, and let not the sun on the second day go down upon it till it is eaten. And let nothing be left over for the third day, for it is not acceptable, for it is not approved, and let it no longer be eaten. And all who eat thereof will bring crime upon themselves. For thus I have found it written in the Sapharim of my forefathers, and in the words of Canute, and in the words of Nuach. Yes, he walked the very same way that these righteous men walked. Abraham walked the very same way that these righteous men walked. Indeed, it was Nuach and Shem and Abba or Eber who taught Abraham. And it was Methuselah and Canute who taught Noah. And it was Adam and the rest of the righteous fathers who taught Canute. Canute was around when Adam was born. Adam lived to be 930 years old. So Canute received some of the teachings of Adam, whom is the firstborn son of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah taught his son Torah. And he taught his son Torah. He taught them the ancient path, the ancient ways. This is an ancient way. And it is ancient because it is Torah. And Torah is ancient. Torah is Yahuwah. He is the living Torah. The ancient path is Torah. Barak Yahuwah. Verse 11. And on all your oblations you shall strew salt, and let not the salt of the covenant be lacking in all your oblations before Yahuwah. And as regards to the wood of the sacrifices, beware lest you bring other wood for the altar in addition to these: cypress, bay, almond, fir, pine, cedar, savine, fig, olive, myrrh, laurel, asphaltus. And of these kinds of wood lay upon the altar under the sacrifice, such as have been tested as to their appearance, and do not lay thereon any split or dark wood, but hard and clean, without fault, a sound and new growth. And do not lay thereon old wood, for its fragrance is gone, for there is no longer fragrance in it as before. These are all the things, these words that Abraham is speaking now to his son Ishak. These are things that are ancient. These are things that are ancient. Not even offerings began on earth. No, they didn't. Is he not the lamb that was slain before the foundation of the world? Yes. Before the foundation of the earth? Yes, he is. Yes, he is. These are ancient teachings. This is an ancient path. And so as we find even Adam, as we read other books, we find that Adam did the same thing. He offered offerings, a sweet savor unto Yahuwah. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And so this is ancient. And again, once more, to understand the importance of this, because some of you still don't get it. These offerings represented us. They represent us. Now, there are no more animal offerings. Yahusha fulfilled these offerings. Yahusha as well represented us. So then, what does he want? He wants the bulls of our lips as a continual offering. He wants our praises. He wants the bulls of our lips. Do you understand? This is the ancient path. This is the ancient path. Get rendering him his offerings. Listen, Mishpaka. The messengers were created before us. They were created before us. And they were bringing Yahuwah offerings before we were created. They were rendering him the bulls of their lips from the day that they were created. From the day that they were created. All bringing him offerings is the bulls of our, bringing him offerings is the ancient path. And if you're not doing this, you're not on the ancient path. Listen, this is not something that, this is something that you have to do. It's not optional. It's not optional. Bringing him offerings is not optional. It's not optional. It's the ancient path. We must do it. We must do it. And if you're on the ancient path, and if you are his remnant, then it's not burdensome for you. It's not a burdensome thing to do. Neither was it a burdensome thing for our ancient fathers to do. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. He has never desired Mishpachah. He has never desired for animals to die. Do you understand that he loves his animals? He loves all his creation. Yes. He loves them. Do you not understand how it grieves him for an animal, for an innocent animal to have to suffer for us? That grieved him. It grieved him. Animals too have souls. They have nefashis. And they're going to be resurrected. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. They are. They are. It grieved him. It was never his desire for any animal to have to die. He tells us, I don't desire for your burnt offerings. I have no desire for that. He had no desire for the burnt offerings of animals. That grieved him. It grieved him. Indeed, he gave the blood for the remission of crime, which was a foreshadowing of the HaMashiach. But it was his desire that as our ancient ancestors would bind hand and foot these animals, and they would hear them and they would see them squirming and bleeding, and that innocent little animal, and you go and you slit that innocent animal's throat, that would split and circumcise their hearts, that would cause a circumcision of the heart, and cause them to not want to commit crime anymore. But it didn't do that. It didn't do that for our ancient ancestors. They would raise animals just for that purpose. Oh, if I commit crime, I know I'm going to commit crime, so I'm going to raise animals. I'm going to have me a whole stall, a whole herd of animals, just for that purpose. When what he wanted was, as you had to slay that animal. And you see, this is why the offender, this is the work of the so-called law that Sha'al was talking about. The works of the law is animal sacrifice. It's animal sacrifice. This is the works of the law. And so the offender himself had to put in work. The offender had to put in work. The offender had to slay the animal for crime. The offender had to skin that animal and cut it up and debowel it and drain the blood and then give it to the Kahan and then give the pieces and then wash it and then give it to the Kahan. And so it was Abba's hope, his expectation, that as the offender had to do that it would circumcise their heart, that it would prick their heart as they had to slay an animal, as an innocent animal had to die on their behalf. But it didn't. It didn't. And it is his desire that as an innocent man, as Abba put on flesh himself and suffered, and all of his blood, all of his dung being drained from his body, it is his desire that would prick our wicked hearts and circumcise our wicked hearts and cause us to not to want to commit crime anymore. This was the purpose. And so it was never his desire to even offer animals in the first place. But he allowed them to take our place so that we would not have to perish, so that we would not have to die. And so with that being said, they took our place. Them lying on that altar was as we were lying on that altar. And so understanding that offering is us. It is us. Yahusha representing us as a sweet smelling aroma. We are impaled with him. We die with him. We are resurrected with him. So we are that offering. And so the ancient path dictates that we bring him his offerings. And if you're not doing so, you're not on the ancient path. You're not on the ancient path. I need everybody to say right now, that you understand?
I understand.
Yes, we understand.
I understand. I understand.
So Abba should not have to chastise you anymore. This bringing him his offerings is not optional. It's mandatory. It's mandatory in accordance with Torah. It's mandatory. It's not optional. And this goes all the way back to Adam in the flesh. But it goes all the way back to eternity. Because the Hamashiach was slaughtered before the foundation of the earth and before the stretching forth of Hashemayim. This is ancient. This is ancient. Verse 14. Besides these kinds of wood, there is none other that you shall place on the altar. For the fragrance is dispersed, and the smell of its fragrance goes not up to the Shamayim. Observe this commandment. Listen. Observe this commandment and do it, my son, that you may be upright in all your deeds. Do you hear? Do you hear? He doesn't want an animal. He doesn't want an animal. He wants our praises. He wants our thanksgiving going up as a sweet fragrance, as a sweet smelling aroma into his nostrils. This is the ancient path. This is the ancient path, and we must observe this commandment. We must observe it. Verse 16. And at all times, be clean in your body. Be clean. This is not optional, Mashpaka. This is not optional. We must be clean in our bodies. Understanding that Yahuwah is Kadush, meaning that he is separated, meaning that he is clean, meaning that he is separated from all uncleanness. He is separated from all uncleanness. And that means what? That we are to be clean as he is clean in all of our behavior. And that means to be clean in our body as well. He struck someone down just last week because they would not adhere to this. He struck them down because they would not adhere. We must be clean in all of our practices and all of our behaviors, inclusive of keeping ourselves clean, inclusive of keeping our homes clean. We must be clean in all of our behaviors. What did Abba say in the Torah each time, well, not each time, but many times before Yahuwah would come? What did he say to Masha? Separate the people. Kadush the people. Have them wash their clothes. Have them wash themselves to separate themselves before I come. Yes, he did. What did he say when our ancestors went out to battle? He says, when you go out to battle, so I understand that I dwell in your midst. And understanding that I dwell in your midst. If someone has a nightly emission, send them outside of the camp and have them wash themselves and then come back into the camp at evening because I walk in your midst. And if you have to go and relieve yourselves, go and take a sharp instrument and go outside of the camp and dig a hole and then cover that hole and then cover up your excrement because I walk in the midst of my people. And so we must be clean in all of our behavior, in all aspects of our lives. This is what it means to be Kadush as he is Kadush. We must be clean in all of our behavior, and we must abstain from all that which is unclean. From all that which is unclean, inclusive of washing our bodies. Inclusive of washing our bodies. This is the ancient path. You cannot say that you are a son or daughter of Yahuwah and you're living in filthiness. You cannot say it. You cannot say that you are a son or daughter of Yahuwah and you're transgressing that which is clean. You see, Torah is clean. Torahlessness is uncleanness. You cannot say that you are on the ancient path if you're walking in any manner, purposely walking in any manner of uncleanness. No, the ancient path is to walk the clean path. The clean way. You see, the ancient path is free of debris. It's free of clutter. It is free of uncleanness. It is a clean and swept path. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we cannot say that we're walking this path with uncleanness on us. No, we cannot. Verse 16. And at all times be clean in your body, and wash yourself with water before you approach the offer on the altar. And wash your hands and your feet before you draw near to the altar. Now we understand we're not pharisaical here. We're not pharisaical. We're not creating our own rules. We're not talking about, Rabbi, why don't your taught ones, why do your taught ones not keep the traditions of the fathers and not wash their hands before eating? We're not pharisaical. That's nowhere in Torah that you have to wash your hands before eating. We're concerned with the inner man. We're concerned with the inner cup. Yes, we are. If you're on the ancient path, you are. We're concerned with the inner cup. Oh, we lay it bare before him. We lay our hearts bare before him. Oh, Abba, clean this inner cup. Please cleanse my heart. Please cleanse my kilyah, my liver, my kidney. Please cleanse my liver. So we're concerned about the inner part, and the outer does not take precedence over the inner. And so I had to speak that disclaimer. But nevertheless, it is important that we also maintain the outer. It's important that we maintain the outer. Again, we're not pharisaical, and we're not all caught up in the outward appearance. We're more caught up in the inner man. We're more concerned with the inner man. Nevertheless, it is important that we keep the outer clean. It is important. And Abba impresses upon me. I must have on clean garments on the Shabbat. I must put on clean garments on the Shabbat. Some of you may feel the same way. I must do it. He compels me. I must have on clean garments on the Shabbat. I must. Because he compels me to do so. And I want to be pleasing to my Abba from the inner man. And I know that all manner of cleanness pleases him. Yes, it does. It pleases him. And when you are done sacrificing, wash again your hands and your feet. And let no blood appear upon you, nor upon your clothes. Be on your guard, my son, against blood. Be on your guard exceedingly. Cover it with dust. And do not eat any blood, for it is the soul. Eat no blood whatsoever. And take no gifts for the blood of man, lest it be shed with impunity, without judgment. For it is the blood that is shed that causes the earth to commit crime. And the earth cannot be cleansed from the blood of man, save by the blood of him who shed it. Mishpaka, what we have here, 47 minutes. I left my alarm on my phone, and it's going to go off here in about 9 minutes. And what that's going to do, and I'm really talking to my YouTube family, what that's going to do is it's going to stop the video recording. It's going to stop it in 9 minutes. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to restart it afterwards. And perhaps someone in Mishpaka is going to come along and teach a servant how to merge videos, because I haven't figured that out yet. I haven't figured out how to merge videos and make it one video. I haven't figured out, in other words, I haven't figured out how to edit them yet. What you get is what you see is what you get. Raw and uncut. Raw and uncut. What you see is what you get. I'm no frills. What you see is what you get. Barak Yahu. I'm just a humble servant, not concerned with frills, just concerned with speaking Abba's word, Barak Yahu, and being obedient to him. Verse 20. And take no present or gift for the blood of man, blood for blood, that you may be accepted before Yahuwah, all Ayun. For he is the defense of the good, and that you may be preserved from all evil, and that he may save you from every kind of death. I pray that you're paying attention. I see, my son, that all the works of the children of men are criminal and wicked, are crime and wickedness, and all their deeds are uncleanness, and an abomination, and a pollution, and there is no righteousness with them. Mishpaka, you see, this is why Abba gives the command that we are to what? To not turn to the right or to the left of the commands that he gives us. In other words, do not turn to the right or to the left of this ancient path. Because if you stick a toe, so much as a toe, off of this ancient path, your toe is in uncleanness. It is in uncleanness. It is in uncleanness. The only cleanness and righteousness in this world is Torah. It's walking this ancient path. Everything else is uncleanness. Everything else is uncleanness.
Yes.
Do you understand? Beware, lest you should walk in their ways. Lest you should walk in their ways. We're talking about walking. We're talking about walking. Either you're walking the ancient path, the narrow path, or you're walking the broad path. There is no in between. There is no in between. There is no gray area. Either you're walking the ancient path, which is the narrow path, obeying the commands of Yahuwah, turning neither to the right or to the left of them, or you're walking the broad path. Indeed, Abba has already spoken to us that even shade is darkness. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Either it is light or it is darkness. Even shade is darkness. There is no in between. There is no in between. Indeed, this is why the Hamashiach tells us that the way is hard. It is hard. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's hard. He goes on to say that there are few who find it. There are few who find the narrow path, the ancient path. It's not easy. It is hard. It is hard. He goes on to say that a good tree cannot bear wicked fruit. It's hard. It's not easy. Don't fool yourselves. It's not easy. It's hard. He goes on to say in 1 John that those who are born of Yahuwah do not commit crime. It is impossible for them to commit crime because his seed remains in them. It's hard. That's why it's narrow. The narrow path, the ancient path, is hard. It's not easy. It's not easy. And some of you still don't get this. You don't get it. You still don't get this. And you don't understand that with Yahuwah, all things are possible. So what does that mean? That means then, if you were born of Ruach, you can do the impossible. That means if you were born of Ruach, you can walk the ancient path. You can. If you're not born of Ruach, like Abraham was, and like the Hamashiach was, you can't walk this ancient path. You can't do it. It's impossible. It's hard. The operative word, Maspaka, is impossible. It is impossible to do without being born from above. It's impossible. We cannot walk this ancient path without being born from above. It's too hard. It's too hard. It's too hard. A good tree cannot bear wicked fruit. And him who was born of, and those who are born of Yahuwah do not commit crime. That's what the text says. We're not going to add to it. We're not going to add conjecture. We're not going to add to it. We're not going to take away from it. That's what it says. That's what it says. And so it's hard. It's hard. And so we must pursue it with our whole heart. And we must pursue the Ruach with our whole heart. Because if we're not, we can't walk this path. We cannot walk it. Verse 22, beware, lest you should walk in their ways and tread in their paths and commit a crime unto death before all Ayun. We cannot leave this ancient path. We cannot leave it. The moment we leave it, we're walking in the ways of the Gentiles. We're walking the broad path that leads to destruction. Do you understand, family, that I can't put this in a percentile, but the vast majority of the world is walking the broad path that leads to destruction. The majority of the world is walking it. Yes. Only a small minority, only a small remnant within a remnant is walking the ancient path. It's hard. It's hard, Mashpaka. It's hard. And it's going to cause you to give up everything. Yes. It's going to cause you to give up everything. Abraham gave up everything. He gave up his family. He gave up his homeland. He gave up everything. Yahusha gave up everything. He gave up his life. He gave up his very life. And so Yahuwah, in the form of Yahusha, gave up his very life. And he requires all from us. All from us. If you're not willing to give up all, you ain't on this ancient path. It's going to require all of us. All of us. Verse 22 again. Beware, lest you should walk in their ways and tread in their paths, and commit a crime unto death before all are you. Else he will hide his face. Listen. Else he will hide his face from you and give you back into the hands of your transgression. Somebody read Proverbs 6:23 real quickly. Proverbs 6:23 real quickly. Come on, real quick, because this alarm getting ready to go off. I want our YouTube family to hear it. Proverbs 6:23.
For the command is a lamp.
No, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. He who turns his ear from hearing the Torah, even his prayer, is an abomination.
6:20. That's 6:28.
Even his prayer is an abomination. You got it? It is written, he who turns his ear away from hearing the Torah, even his prayer is an abomination. And so we cannot turn from this path. We cannot turn from his path. As it reads here again, beware lest you should walk in their ways and tread in their paths and commit a crime unto death before all are you. Else he will hide his face from you. He hides his face from all who transgress Torah. Their prayers are an abomination, and give you back into the hands of your transgression, and root you out of the land and your seed likewise from under Shammai.